All right. We have started. So if anyone can hear me, just type something in the chat and we'll get started, and hopefully we can see what BitcoinJS is all about. I think there's about a 20-second lag between when I'm actually talking and when you guys are going to hear it. So just be, conscious of that. So, I might not see your chats until like 30 seconds later. Okay, thank you, Amen. I just acknowledged your chat immediately right after it came up. So that gives you an idea of how much of a time lag we're working with. But anywho, so yeah, it's about 30 seconds or so. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Okay, so hi everyone. I am Jonathan Underwood. I am the maintainer of BitcoinJS ecosystem. I am not anyone really special. I stand on the shoulders of giants. Many people, as you can see here, are constantly, they've been working tirelessly on this project before me, and I am just kind of the maintainer that kind of looks after things. I have done some of the bigger projects that I've personally done with BitcoinJS Lib is number one was converting to TypeScript from originally it was JavaScript only, and I converted to TypeScript while I was learning about TypeScript at the same time. So some of the parts are kind of, from a TypeScript dev perspective, a little bit noob-ish, but I was learning TypeScript as I was making it. And I also made the whole BIP 174 PSBT thing. I did that with the help of one of the guys from Umbrel. And then also recently, some of the recent developments have been done by recent contributors to support all sorts of various things. So a large majority of what the BitcoinJS ecosystem is all about is basically what we have on the BitcoinJS Lib README, which is, can I trust this code? And the answer to that is don't trust, verify. So basically, the one thing that I really wanted to be careful of with TypeScript was that, in the case that the TypeScript command line program were to ever be, backdoored or anything like that, I wanted to make it so that the JavaScript would never change. So one pattern that you'll see that's very unusual outside of BitcoinJS is you'll see one folder that has the main TypeScript stuff, which is all TS files, and then as a sibling folder, you'll see a source file or a dist file or something like that folder, where basically you'll have all of the DTS files and the JS files committed to the GitHub repo. And then usually what I'll do is I'll have something like this, where is it, package.json, where we will have some sort of script like this, which is called gitdiff or gitdiffci or something like that, which is basically it'll run the build command that actually runs the TypeScript transpiler, and then after it runs that, it will actually run gitdiff exit code, which means if there's any diff, then it returns an error exit code. So that basically whenever someone creates a pull request, then we can know that they have modified both the TypeScript and the JavaScript in a way that is, deterministic. Because if anyone runs the TypeScript CLI and it creates a different JavaScript, then that something's up. So I always have like a CI job that does something like that. So a lot of you guys might have been a little bit, wondering what that was all about. So that's kind of what's going on. So can I trust the code? Don't trust verify. There has been a little bit of deviation with that whole kind of idea recently with this repo that I have, which is called Tiny SECP 25 256K1. Basically, what this repo was originally about was trying to create a smaller version of the node SECP 256K1 dependency without actually having to pull in all of these unnecessary functions and things like that from the C library, lib SECP 256K1. And basically, so what we did was we kind of squeezed down the interface into the bare bones what you exactly need for a Bitcoin library. And it originally was written with a C++ add-on. And after that, I rewrote it in Rust. So with Rust, you can kind of see it right here. We're basically kind of importing the C-based library through Rust and then turning it into WebAssembly binary. So that's one kind of deviation that is kind of, it's a binary blob. You can't really verify it. So the way that I kind of mitigate that a little bit is I have it so that the CI actually stores a built artifact so that it's not me that's actually building the WASM. It's the GitHub Actions job. So basically, this is kind of how I'm trying to get around the what if Jonathan put in a backdoor or whatever. You can tell that it's the CI, the directives for the CI are here and they're committed to the repository, and you can check that these are okay. So as long as the GitHub Actions don't get compromised, the WASM binary should be fine. Some people might not like that trade-off, which is understandable, and you can actually build this yourself. I mean, it's all open source, and if you have Rust installed, you can build the WASM binary yourself, and you can actually vendor the entire folder if you would like. That is totally an option for you. And we also have an assembly.js. I can't remember exactly where it is in here, but we also have a job that takes here we go, create the ASM.js package from the WASM binary. And that allows people who don't have WASM support in their environments to use the ASM.js kind of bundled, uglified, crazy looking JavaScript stuff so that they can use regular old JavaScript. So basically, this is the only kind of exception to that rule. But in general, I think that, having this don't trust verify being something that's very kind of central to the whole BitcoinJS ethos is very important to the project. So first thing, now that we've gotten that out of the way, I would like to, I'll check comments, and Mohit, hi. I'm sorry if I mispronounce any of your names. I'm not familiar with, various different languages and how to pronounce names and whatnot, but hi, how you doing? Thanks for coming. We're going to be having a lot of fun here, hopefully, in a little bit. So, anywho, to give you an idea of what the kind of purview of BitcoinJS is like, our main repository is the BitcoinJS lib repository that I just showed you, the big README with all the don't trust verify stuff on it. That's the BitcoinJS lib repository. And then outside of that, we have a bunch of smaller modules, which, for instance, do things like create mnemonic seeds using BIP39, to create an encrypted Bitcoin private key using BIP38, which is not recommended, but we still have that as a legacy. coin select, which helps you select different UTXOs, BIP32, which lets you do hierarchical wallets, and then a whole bunch of other stuff. A lot of these we use inside of BitcoinJS lib, but a lot of these are kind of just standalone. So, like for instance, the Bolt 11 Lightning payment request format. That's also something that we do. We also have a BIP44 constants, which basically just copies over the slip 44 list of different coin versions. We actually have a CI job that just deploys a new version every single day if there's any diff, which is kind of, again, trusting GitHub Actions and Microsoft and all that stuff. But it's basically just an array of numbers, so it shouldn't be that difficult to verify when you download it. And then we have a whole bunch of we have a lot of repositories. We have 44 repositories in total. We have a lot of different stuff. Some of this stuff I did not make. I have never even seen. Like fast DAP parser written in C++. This was written by Daniel, which, I think I might have looked at it once. Someone made an issue one time, and I looked at it and I just said, I don't know what's going on. Threw my hands up in the air, had no clue. But basically, this is basically a bunch of different repositories. But if you kind of split it down into its bare parts, basically the main BitcoinJS lib library is all about different kind of concepts in Bitcoin. So, like for instance, if we look at the main kind of source code folder, you can see there's two folders here, payments and PSBT. But in general, there's just a bunch of TS files that are kind of split between different concepts. So, like address has to do with like converting addresses to outputs, like script pub keys, and then back and forth and checking all the BEC32 and the base 58 check and all that stuff. So that's all in here. BIP66, this is basically just the whole checking to make sure that things are not very malleable. So for instance, the different requirements for encoded signatures and stuff like that. We don't really use that much in the actual library, but we do offer it so that basically this is something that people can use to check their signatures. I think we also use it in the payment area so that we can check to make sure that signatures are okay. Let me double check to make sure that BIP66 is actually being exported somewhere. I guess it's not. So I guess we basically use it inside of payments and stuff like that. But yeah, so this is basically BIP66, which was all about malleability and trying to kind of keep that down. Block, self-explanatory, a bunch of different methods about how blocks are made, how to, from a buffer, we're going to make sure that it's the correct size and that we actually read all the stuff from the buffer that was input to the function. And then we can do all sorts of stuff like calculate the target, calculate the Merkle root from an array of transactions, and do all sorts of stuff you'd want to do with blocks. This is good for like parsing things, stuff like that. And then, buffer utils. These are just kind of little utils with buffer. This might be important for anyone who's working on the migration from buffer to uint8 array. That was one of the projects that I put onto Summer Bitcoin. And basically, this is just kind of taking a bunch of buffer APIs and kind of using it to so for instance, this is write uint64le. That was not available on the buffer API. So we actually made like a helper function that uses int32le, twice to basically figure out how we can write a 64-bit little endian unsigned integer into a buffer. So these are kind of like helper functions that kind of go on top of the existing buffer API. So these are probably something that will be eventually put into the uint8 array tools library, which is something that I mentioned to you guys that were interested. So yeah, class buffer writer, there's a bunch of kind of like little tools that we've added along the way as we've kind of built out the library. Some of the organization on some of these things might be a little bit, harebrained, but it is what it is. So crypto is basically just hashing, but we also recently have had some things like this. So this is tagged hashing, which is used in Taproot. We have a lot of the actual hashes of specific constants that are we just have them here as buffers, because it just makes a lot more sense to just have them as a constant, so that we don't have to hash them every single time that we want to use them. In instances like this where like you can't really, as a human being, check to see if this is the correct constant for this, the way that we kind of verify that is we add a test in the unit tests that will actually go through and run the actual hashes and compare it to the constants that are put into this exported constant. It's basically somewhere in the test folders. I think crypto spec, yeah. Yep. So it goes into, I think there's fixtures, crypto JSON. Here we go. Tagged hash, tap tweak should result in this. And then, where is it? Crypto spec. Tagged hash prefixes, tags, map, and then basically it takes the tag and then it takes the actual hash and then it basically tags them together. And then it says, we need to make sure that everything is the same. So, anywho, that's basically, the way that we would kind of verify constants like this. But yeah, so going back to the main area, this is an interesting one. The ECClib TS file is basically, as someone new to the area, could you please suggest some resources where I can learn more about the technical aspects of Bitcoin? Okay. Oh, hi Christian. How you doing? So the Bitcoin dev, let's see, Bitcoin dev resources. Yeah. So if you go to developer.bitcoin.org, then you can go and see this, which is basically, Bitcoin developer kind of a guide that basically just says, how does the blockchain work? Okay, it works like this, it goes like this is how the transactions work, this is how proof of work works, this is how block height and forking works, this is transaction data. It's basically like an overview. And then you can actually go into the different topics, say transactions, contracts, wallets, payment processing, operating modes, P2P network, and then you can go to the reference, and you can say reference for blockchain transactions, wallets. You could say, oh, I want to go say, oh, it's single chain wallets. Okay, hierarchical deterministic wallets. And you can actually go in and see all these different things and how they kind of work together. After kind of looking through this, you can also go to other resources. Like for instance, it looks like someone has a bunch of technical books listed here. Programming Bitcoin is a good one. Mastering Bitcoin is a good one. It's available online for free as a PDF. Grokking Bitcoin is also good. Bitcoin Optech is a newsletter that kind of talks about recent developments in Bitcoin Core updates. So it's more like kind of Bleeding edge is kind of a term that usually people kind of overuse to talk about something that moves really fast. Bitcoin does not move very fast, so bleeding edge doesn't really feel proper, but basically it's the most recent developments in Bitcoin related protocols and whatnot. It's very good read. You can, of course, look at all the different mailing lists for Lightning Dev, Bitcoin Dev, all that fun stuff. This is a very good list of stuff. I think this is by Lucas DCF. Yeah. And it's just Bitcoin Dev resources on GitHub. So this is a very good resource. I highly recommend it. So back to the ECClib thing. So originally, when BitcoinJS Lib was first, I was made the maintainer of it. The elliptic curve, kind of like public key, private key, signature stuff, was very, stuck inside and intertwined very tightly coupled with the BitcoinJS Lib library. And that was causing problems because, at the time I wanted to move the entire ecosystem to WASM, to WebAssembly. And I thought the first thing that would be, best to kind of move to WASM would be the most performance critical part. So the signatures and the verification of signatures and stuff like that. So I moved it to WASM, and almost immediately I realized that WASM is just not ready for prime time anywhere at all. And the reason being is not because WASM is anything that's bad. It's just that the JavaScript ecosystem in general is very fractured, and there are a lot of different runtimes. So originally it started with Windows Internet Explorer. Up until about version 11 was the largest browser, and almost everyone targeted that. But then, Firefox, Netscape, Google Chrome, and they kind of became like the main, and Internet Explorer just kind of died out. So the browsers have kind of coalesced onto a single sort of standard of what kind of functions and what kind of global things there should be. That's great. But then, Node.js came along, and Node.js changed a lot of the APIs. They didn't support certain things. They support certain ECMAScript standards at different times. And at the time, WebAssembly was still it was supported in all of the runtimes, but a lot of the tooling did not support WebAssembly because no one really wanted WebAssembly to support, because no one was using WebAssembly because they couldn't get support in their bundlers. So it was kind of like a chicken and egg problem. So basically what I said to myself was, okay, if I update this and push this out, and I'm never going to be able to upgrade BitcoinJS Lib to actually use it, because no one will want to have a dependency on WebAssembly when half of the building tools and bundlers don't even support WebAssembly at the time. And so basically what I said was, okay, we need to somehow tease out all of the signature stuff. And so what I did was I basically made it so that on start, there's no elliptic curve library as a direct dependency. Instead, what we have is a types tiny SVP whatever interface, which is in the types.ts. Here it is. So if we look at this, it's basically saying, okay, in order to be used inside this library, you need to have these two functions. And these two functions are something that TinySCP 256K1 implements. But if you have your own implementation, that's totally fine. These are the only two functions that are actually needed in this library. But if you don't have this initialized, which you initialize by calling the init ECClib function, when you call that, it actually stores the ECClib inside of this kind of global constant that is just sitting here. And basically, it'll look for this whenever it's trying to get the ECClib. And if it doesn't exist, it'll throw an error. And if it does exist, then it'll return the ECClib so that you can actually use it for whatever it's needed inside this library. We do similar things inside of BIP32. So like this is BIP32, which is HD wallets. We do something very similar where basically the ECC stuff is tested here. So when we actually import it, when we import the actual module, it does run a few little tests to make sure that the module actually does implement the interface that it's supposed to implement. This is for BIP32, so this is a lot more involved. All of these functions are implemented by Tiny SCP 256K1. There are also other libraries that implement it. So you can actually take your own library, and there are a couple out there that do just pure JavaScript and all that stuff. And you can actually plug it into this BIP32 factory, and it'll return a BIP32 API, which can allow you to actually do the different, elliptic curve operations. So that is one of the kind of bigger points of the BitcoinJS ecosystem, is that BitcoinJS lib now no longer is tightly coupled with the actual public key, private key stuff. There is an optional way that you can init the ECC lib so that it can actually utilize those two different little functions to verify some stuff in some kind of taproot things. I think if you don't have the ECC lib init, then the P2TR payment that does all the taproot stuff will actually return an error because it says, taproot is so integrated. Like taproot expects that you have the ability to verify like a public key and all that stuff. So it needs those functions, but we didn't want to add the dependency in. So we have it so that you have to init the library and kind of like set it into the library and kind of connect them at runtime to allow BitcoinJS lib to actually use the ECC lib to do stuff for P2TR and stuff like that. All right, so now that we've kind of gotten a good overview of what BitcoinJS lib is about, here are the different kind of problems that that I've been feeling lately about kind of like what's going on with the BitcoinJS ecosystem. Before we get into that, are there any questions? Like anything so far that you have a question about, or anything that you've had a question about before in regards to BitcoinJS lib or just Bitcoin in general, especially in relation to JavaScript, TypeScript, stuff like that. If you have anything, go ahead and ask a question if you need to, and I will look at that. But since there's a significant lag, then it'll probably be like about 30 seconds or so until you actually hear that. So I'm just gonna stretch things out a little bit while I kind of wait for any comments. But if it seems like there's not any comments coming, then I think we'll go ahead and start talking about the different projects of Summer of Bitcoin. Okay. Well, I'll go ahead and I'll talk about one of the first projects, and then we'll come back here and see if you guys have any questions. So the first project is switching from buffer to uint8 array. So this project, as I have explained on the matrix room to a lot of the participants for Summer of Bitcoin, BitcoinJS Lib was created in a time where the Bitcoin ecosystem was very new on JavaScript, and there weren't a lot of libraries, and there wasn't very good browser support and things like that. So basically, the way that it was originally made was it used a lot of Node.js APIs, so like the buffer API, and then it relied on a bunch of kind of browser bundler type tools. One of the ones that actually, one of the original maintainers of BitcoinJS actually also helped maintain is called Browserify. And that whole ecosystem, there's a whole there's a GitHub organization for Browserify. Browserify basically takes all of these buffer and all these different APIs, and it turns it into something that is able to be used on a browser. Now, in recent years, the Node.js ecosystem has implemented most of the browser API space. So it's a lot easier now to implement a kind of a library that can be used both in a Node.js context as well as a browser context. However, in order to do that, one of the biggest hurdles that we have to get over is getting rid of the buffer API, because the buffer API is not supported on browsers without some sort of tool, and a lot of tools are dropping support for buffer. So I'm getting more and more issues where someone might say to me, "Oh, I'm getting this error," and the error is very hard to understand. It's like, it's not something clear like the buffer API does not exist, so you need to like polyfill that or somehow get it in there. The error message is always like, the undefined prototype of this is not present, or something like that. And so people kind of get confused, and then I look into it and it's like, oh, I'm using this new cool bundler that just came out a year ago, and they decided that they're not going to support legacy stuff because, you know, no one uses it anymore, supposedly. Well, we do. So we need to kind of move eventually to get away from buffer, as well as anything else that is Node.js specific that does not work in the browser. And then, yeah, that's basically the first project. As I've explained before, this project basically entails going through all of the most popular repositories. You can actually sort by stars and just see BIP38 you can ignore because BIP38 is not even, it's not recommended for use. Coin select you can ignore. But you know, some of these other things, anything that you look at and you see and you see it using buffers, if you can switch that over to uint8 arrays, that would be very helpful. So basically, I think instead of a top-down, so starting from BitcoinJS Lib and going down into the smaller libraries, I think it would probably be easier to start with kind of the smaller, like BIP39, BIP32, kind of like single-purpose libraries, and just kind of slowly kind of building those up and converting them to uint8 array. And then eventually, you know, once we get BitcoinJS Lib also on the uint8 array bandwagon, then we can kind of start bumping versions and putting out new releases and whatnot. There is a tool set which is called uint8 array tools. The other day, I had a pull request from one of the participants, which is Bhavesh Gupta, and he wrote a new function for us that we can now use. And I told him here, or actually no, I told him on the matrix room that for now, I think instead of bumping the version for every single function that we add, it might be better to just, while you're working on another project, converting it to uint8 array, you should just switch the dependency from the npm dependency to just the master branch of this GitHub repo, and then that way it'll basically download the dependency from GitHub, and then it'll install it that way. It'll make things a lot easier, I think, while we're kind of moving stuff around. And like, for instance, if you're not too sure whether this function should be this way on the uint8array tools library, while at the same time not being sure whether or not your usage in whatever other library is not, whatever, you can always set the dependency in this library to point to your fork of the uint8array tools. And then you can work on kind of both at the same time. And then once you kind of get the uint8array tools PR merged, then you can either switch it to the master branch of uint8array tools, or we could just decide, okay, there's a lot of functions now that have been added since the last release, so I'll go ahead and release a npm version change. I'm comfortable with merging dependency changes that have GitHub stuff in them, as long as it's not like an official npm release. So we can merge stuff to the master branch of any of these repos that are just pointing to other master branches of other BitcoinJS repositories. That's totally fine. But like, if we are going to release a new version of like BitcoinJS lib, I want to go through all of those dependencies, recursively, and make sure that all of their dependencies have an npm release that they can rely on, just to kind of keep everything on npm, and keep everything, in the whole semver, breaking guarantees and stuff like that. Keep it good, because when you point to master, master can change any million types of ways, so there's really no guarantee of like not breaking the API and things like that. So we don't want to make a release that has a GitHub dependency on it. But yeah, so this was a great PR. Thank you very much, Bhavesh. And if anyone else has functions that they need to use in their, like if they're updating one repository and they find that there's some function missing from uint8array that they need to kind of mimic the buffer API that exists there, definitely go ahead and start kind of working at the same time and figuring out what needs to be done. And then once you have everything kind of running, you can make a PR for the tools, and then make a PR for whatever it is you're working on, and just link them together, post a link and be like, this requires this, and I'll look through it and review it and give you any comments and stuff like that. So let me look back at the comments again. All right, nothing. Cool. Anywho, so that is the uint8array from Buffer project. A lot of you had showed interest in that. I would say, just because I'm not very organized and I'm not good with organizing teams and whatnot, before you start working on anything, just kind of announce it in the matrix room, and make sure that you're keeping up with the matrix room before you start working on anything. Just so that, like, oh, that guy's working on buffer to uint8array for this repo, and he said he's going to start working on it. But yeah, when you do that, one thing that I just thought of, you should probably put a link to your fork so that people know where it is you're going to be working on it. And if they see that you're not actually working on it, like none of the branches on your fork are actually getting anything done, they might kind of like mention you and say, hey, are you actually working on this? Are you just not pushing it to GitHub, or what's going on? Because I want to work on it, So just say, I'm going to work on this repo for this project, and I'm going to do this, and this is my fork that I'm going to work on. And if you say that, then other people can see it and say, oh, this guy said he's going to work on this like a month ago, but his fork isn't moving at all, so I think I'm going to work on it, or whatever. I don't know how long Summer Bitcoin is, but just so that we're not working on the same stuff at the same time, kind of. And then also to make sure that someone doesn't say, I'm going to work on this, and then kind of holds the ball for like a month and then does nothing And then someone else can kind of see that and say, okay, I think I'm going to work on this because we can't get a hold of this guy and he said he's going to work on it for a month, so I'm going to work on it. We can do stuff like that. So just kind of, keep up with the Matrix chat and mention me if you need any kind of like judgment calls. Like, this guy said he was going to do it like 2 weeks ago. He hasn't done anything yet. What do you think? Should I work on it? And I can maybe give you an answer and be like, yeah, you should work on it or something like that. But other than that, really, anyone who wants to work on any repository, I think that this is an overall good thing for any repository, moving from buffer to uint array. So yeah, just do any project that you want, as any repository that you want, convert it there, and I will review it and give you comments, help you out, help you figure out what's going on. And if you have any questions about anything specific, like if the area where buffer is being used is very kind of finicky, sometimes you'll have things where, like, if you change the method that you're using very slightly, then the hash doesn't match or something like that, and some unit test will break because you switched it to uint array or something like that. Any kind of tough things like that, just go ahead and commit it as is with the failing test and just throw me a mention and say, I don't know why this test is breaking. Help me, please. I have children. Basically, kind of cries for help. Help me, please. Go ahead and do that, and I'll take a look at it whenever I have time. Yeah, that's it for the UTF, or not that, uint array conversion thing. Maybe put a poll for that. Yeah. If we're kind of voting on whether or not someone should take over something, that actually might be a good idea. But we'll go ahead and we'll play that by ear. I'm not very good with deciding on ways to work on this stuff, but yeah, if you guys have any ideas like that, like I think we should put it to a vote, or whatever, feel free to say whatever you want whenever you want, I'm open to any and all ideas. Okay, so the next project is ECMAScript modules. So in browsers, ECMAScript modules have been around for quite a while. Recently, Node.js has supported ECMAScript modules in every single LTS release that is currently supported. However, a lot of kind of tooling and stuff like that is now kind of centering around ESM and kind of moving away from CommonJS. CommonJS is what Node.js used to use since the beginning and up until recently. It still supports it, obviously, it's the default, but it's basically the way that people usually call it is CommonJS is require. So if you have to require the dependency and write require parentheses, whatever, that's CommonJS. And then you take whatever API it is and you kind of set it to export modules. That is CommonJS. ES modules, ESM, or in Node.js, in the package JSON, you put type, not types, but type module. And when you do that, every JS file is considered a module, and it must have like export function, export const, anything that you want to export, you have to say export in front of it. You don't set something to export modules like you did with CommonJS. And then to import dependencies, you write import x from y, this type of thing. It's very similar to how TypeScript works. TypeScript kind of works in a ES modules type fashion, but it kind of transpiles down to CommonJS and or ES modules if you would like. So with the conversion, you're going to run into a bunch of issues because it's really finicky, and because a lot of the repositories have kind of legacy Node.js isms that have just stayed in the code base for a very long time. So it might be a little bit hairy where you're just trying to convert everything to ES modules, and it isn't working, and it doesn't work very well, and you just kind of throw your hands up in the air and you don't really know what's going on. That happens to me a lot, not just with ES modules, but just everything in general in life. But so if you ever have any trouble, don't be afraid to just say, this project is probably just way above my head. With the whole ES modules thing, it's just too hairy to kind of tease it out. So I'm going to try to look for an easier repository to convert, and then just kind of move over. Definitely feel free to do that. You know, you can always ask me for help, and I might look at it. But definitely, I have had some hard times converting ES, CommonJS to ES modules. It's a lot easier to do it when the repository is in TypeScript, because it just requires changing the settings in the tsconfig JSON file to output ES module JavaScript instead of outputting CommonJS JavaScript. So it's a little bit easier when you have TypeScript, so you don't actually have to change the source code. So one way that you can actually do it is if it's a JS only repo, you could actually convert it to TypeScript and then make it output ES modules. That's what I've done on a couple of occasions. And then if we take it one step further, there's a concept called a hybrid package, where you can take a single package with a single package JSON, and if you import that dependency using a require, then it will look at the package JSON of the dependency, and it will see, I think it's called an export object. And in the export, it says, if it's a browser, then use this. If it's, if it's an import, like ES module is called import, then use this. If it's require, then use this. They have a lot of aliases for CommonJS, like CommonJS, require, all sorts of stuff. You can actually look on the Node.js package JSON specification and look at the exports section, and it'll tell you all about what's going on there. Some of the older bundlers, and when I say older, I mean not really that old, but like Webpack for a while was not respecting exports at all. So some of the hybrid packages that I had made, they were working with some bundlers, but not working with other bundlers, because it seems like bundlers in general are leaning towards using ES modules whenever they can, because it's a lot easier to do tree shaking and kind of shaking off dead code, because every single file has its own module, so it's a lot easier to just kind of scrape off different files and whatnot. So a lot of bundlers do use that, but some of the older, semi-older bundlers do not. So yeah, so the ES modules project is going to be a little bit funky, a little bit hard, depending on the repository. It might even be very hard. I mean, nothing's impossible. I mean, we could just rewrite the entire thing using ES modules, but that nobody wants to do that. So if you feel like you're having to rewrite way too much or do way too much, definitely go ahead and ask me questions. Send me a link to whatever branch you're working on, or if you want to just open up a pull request, even though all the tests are failing, feel free to do that as well. Do whatever you need to get my attention. Yeah. Okay, so that's the ES modules project. Why aren't we using TypeScript? So we are using TypeScript. A lot of the repos are using TypeScript, but some of the repos are kind of legacy, and they were made at a time where TypeScript was not that popular, and they're very small, and it just felt like upgrading them to TypeScript is so not necessary because of how small of an API surface that they have. However, yeah, I mean, that's another thing that you can definitely do. I didn't make it a project because I don't think it's too important. But if you want to take one of our old packages that is not TypeScript and convert it to TypeScript, that I would definitely look into merging something like that, because turning it into TypeScript is actually a very good step towards converting it to ES modules and stuff like that. So, I mean, if you want to do that, that's definitely fine. It looks like a question. Hey, for the ESM project, I was wondering where I should put the DTS files. I'm currently coupling it with dist ESM, but I was wondering if it should move to its own directory like dist types. We actually had an issue with that in BitcoinJS lib a while ago. In general, it seems like the best way to deal with it is to put the DTS files in the same folder as the common JS files. And the reason being, if you're only making the ESM files, definitely just put it in the same folder as the ESM files. But if you're making both, if you're making a hybrid, you should really only put the DTS files in the common JS one, because a lot of tooling that can look at ES modules is also able to kind of look in different folders for DTS files and the JS files. Whereas the older stuff, a lot of like the older plugins and things like that haven't been updated, when they look for types stuff, like old plugins for IDEs and stuff like that, when they look for the DTS files, they'll only look in the folder where the JS files are. So just by virtue of the JS files for ESM being ESM, it would probably break on the ESM before it broke on, having the DTS files in a different folder. So I tend to find that putting the DTS files in with the common JS if you have them, and if you don't have them, putting them in with the ESM JS files, so in the same folder. So in a given folder, you would have like an index.js, and then right beside it, index.dts is, I think, the best idea. So we had another question: which repo requires the most love at the moment? BitcoinJS lib. I would say that the most love is definitely needed with the BIP 174. That is actually one of the projects that is on the Summer of Bitcoin. It's the project to get BIP 174 up to date with the actual BIPs. So this BIP is about PSBTs, and I implemented the first draft while it was still kind of in motion, like it was still kind of changing, and it still is changing. I don't think it was finalized, or maybe it was recently, but it was still kind of changing when I implemented this. So this is actually missing certain features of the original BIP 174, but it's changed so much that just kind of going through the BIP and going through this library and figuring out what it's missing is just a huge daunting task. So I've been putting it off for a very long time. That's why I added it as a project. The difficulty is pretty high because you have to understand what's going on here and compare what's going on here to the BIP itself and make sure that these kind of jive together and they're matching. And then in addition to that, if you can, BIP 174 actually has an extension BIP. Okay, so it's final, so this BIP will not change. There's an extension BIP. I forget exactly where. I think 320? No. I'll go ahead and look at the table of contents. Okay. All right, let's go down here. PSBT. Oh, here we go. 370. That was it. So 370, 371, 372. These 3 bips kind of extend what PSBT can do. So the first step of that project that I put out on Summer of Bitcoin would be to verify that BIP 174's repo actually matches BIP 174. And then after that's done, then the next step would be adding whatever you can from BIP 370, 371, 372, which is Bitcoin PSBT version 2, tap fields for PSBT, and pay to contract tweet caches fields for PSBT. So anything that can get done is a huge help. It's a great help. It's definitely one of the kind of projects that kind of needs the most love, but at the same time, I feel like a lot of the ecosystem doesn't really even make use of a lot of these newer features on BIP1 on PSBT because so many places don't support the new features that so many, like a bunch of places don't bother to implement the new features because no one else implements them. So I figure someone needs to be the first, the first chicken to lay the egg so that we can get rid of the whole chicken and egg problem. So, if any of you guys want to work on any part of that, that's definitely something that would help out tremendously. So that, that was also answering a question, and it was explaining one of the projects on Summer of Bitcoin. Great. All right, makes sense. Also, the test in Bixit, for example, run it from the build files. However, there's 2 build outputs for CGS. Was wondering if I could just test them in the source. Yeah. Also, I completed a lot of the boilerplate stuff for the big ones. Can I go ahead with draft PR before it gets too big to review? Oh yeah, go ahead, definitely. Whenever you guys want to make a PR, don't feel shy about it. If you feel like I am ignoring your PR, it could be that my notifications did not notify me because my GitHub notifications are insane and they randomly get read. Like, I swear on everything in my being, I did not click on them. I did not open them. I did not mark them as done. But somehow they disappear. I don't know. Maybe like a tiny little gnome in my computer is like messing with my mind. I don't know. Anywho, so sometimes I miss things. If that happens, definitely send me a ping on Matrix, and I'll try to get to your PR as soon as I can. But yeah. So we've kind of gone through all the different projects, and some of you guys have talked about some specific things that you guys are working on. But yeah, definitely I would like to say, I think there's one more project that we can go over, which is the Rust Bitcoin part. So Rust Bitcoin is let's go Rust Bitcoin. Okay, so Rust Bitcoin. The Rust Bitcoin project. This is actually one of my favorite projects currently because I am a big Rust fan. I'm a big Rust fan. I wear shirts about Rust and I talk about Rust all the time. And at my work, at my day job, I actually a lot of our legacy code is TypeScript and some JavaScript. But recently I've been trying to add more and more modules and things like that that use Rust, whether that's Rust as a compiled binary or Rust as a native library, or whether it's like WebAssembly, stuff like that. So so I've been doing that a lot. Yeah, we need Rust script. That's a good idea. Someone actually posted. Someone posted on X the other day that they made some sort of browser or something that has like a built-in rustc, and you can actually create a script tag with the source as Rust, and then you can write Rust inside of a script tag, and then it'll actually like compile it when it downloads the HTML. I don't know. Some people just make the coolest things that I want. But yeah, so basically, my whole thing with that project was I don't have a concrete idea of how to integrate Rust Bitcoin with BitcoinJS, but I do feel like the future of the whole browser and Node.js server-side stuff is moving towards Rust. I feel like the back end of JavaScript with Node.js is going to go from running on Node.js to running on, you know, all these Rust-based and Zig-based and whatnot runtimes that are much, much faster. And then it'll eventually get to the point where people are like, well, we could also write the back end in Rust. And then we could also write the front end in Rust. And it's a lot faster, it works a lot greater. So I feel like BitcoinJS and JavaScript in general, I don't think they will disappear anytime soon, but I do feel like a lot of the kind of industry is moving towards making use of these kinds of WebAssembly things that are compiled from languages similar to Rust. So I think just kind of brainstorming and coming up with ideas of like what kind of things we could do, that definitely has merit. So I mean, if any of you guys want to play around with BitcoinJS and Rust Bitcoin, and like, I don't know, like I don't think we'll actually merge it, but it would be interesting to see kind of like a prototype where like maybe we implement the BitcoinJS interface of a block that is usable by another JavaScript package that takes us as a dependency, but on the back end it uses like some like in mempool we actually use what's called the NAPI RS, the NAPI RS, which is a library that takes basically anything that's written in Rust, and you can actually import it as like a native module in JavaScript. So maybe you could do something like that, or maybe you could do it with WebAssembly, or do something cool like that, and just kind of do cool stuff or talk about ideas or just anything that you want to, that kind of like helps move forward how we can kind of integrate Rust into the whole BitcoinJS community. So that's the final project. We kind of ran over a little bit the kind of stuff that the BitcoinJS ecosystem covers, but are there any questions about anything related to BitcoinJS, any of the repos, anything at all that you guys kind of have come up with while you've been working on the different projects? I remember there was a question about whether you should put the DTS files in a separate folder, same folder. I answered that. And then you were talking about running the tests for Bec32. That's another thing is, if you have two versions of something, you do want to test both versions, but I feel like if the ESM version and the CommonJS version are both compiled from TypeScript, maybe it would be okay to only test one of them. That's kind of my feelings about it. If you can, definitely, test both of them. It might be a good idea to switch testing suites, because some of the older repos use testing suites that are very kind of old, whereas a lot of modern testing suites they kind of have a very similar API. So if you switch that, then you could probably test both ESM and COM.js in the same job, I think. But yeah. Any thoughts about having descriptor support in JS? I'm totally up to it. If you're familiar with BitcoinJS, we do have a concept called payments, which is essentially like you create this kind of object of lazily evaluated data. So like if I create a P2PKH payment with just a pub key, then that object just holds the pub key until you try to get the address aspect, the attribute. And once you try to read the address attribute, then the kind of lazily loaded closure goes in and it takes the pub key and it hashes it and it stores it in the hash, and then it takes the hash and it turns it into the address and it stores it in the address. So that basically it's like it's all lazily loaded and stuff like that. However, we don't have any way to kind of like with EC pair, we have a kind of a second level concept of BIP32, so that you can basically use BIP32 to generate smaller EC pairs essentially. The EC pair library and the BIP32 library. With our payments API, we didn't make that a separate library because we felt like, I think Daniel made most of the payments. Basically, it was just kind of to convenience stuff. But basically, you know, if we could have a higher level thing above payments that uses the payments to create what the descriptor had inside of it, and then basically the descriptor language itself, like the actual string, is like the serialization and deserialization of that class, if you understand what I'm saying. So like, you know, with BIP32, we have that kind of like xpub, xpriv, and that's got all the information in it. And then when you pull that into BitcoinJS, you create a BIP32 class, like an object of that class. And it contains all the information, and it has helpful methods that let you do stuff like deriving and creating other xpubs and xprivs. With descriptors, I think it would be cool if we could deserialize a descriptor, like a string, and kind of turn it into this object that contains all the information that was inside the descriptor, and it uses that to kind of create an interface that says something like, for instance, create next sequence or something like that. So if there was something that contained a sequence inside of it, then calling that would return, you know, the next thing in the sequence, and you could maybe query what index it was in the sequence, or maybe like it returns an object that has the actual address of the thing, or maybe it's also lazily evaluated and it's like a little object that, you know, it's a payment, but it also contains the parent descriptor that created it. And then you could basically say, this is the 413 like variation of this descriptor or whatever. And then that would be in addition to whatever was in the payment originally. So, I mean, there's a lot of ways you can kind of construct it. Obviously, the first step to that, I think, would be creating a deserialization. So taking a descriptor and converting it into some sort of data object with a list of parameters that you could then use to reconstruct that same string. And then once you get that, then it's just a matter of what kind of methods, what kind of things we want to stick on that, what does it return, things like that. That would be really, really awesome. I personally have not found much need for descriptors right now. That's another topic that I was kind of going to talk about a little bit. But yeah, so right now, most of my contributions to the BitcoinJS ecosystem is mostly just kind of maintenance stuff. I've pretty much stopped all active development. And the reason why is because I have a day job. And at the day job, we basically don't really have much use for a lot of the newer stuff that is coming in to the whole kind of Bitcoin ecosystem, and so it kind of ruins my ability to justify kind of working on stuff like that. So definitely, I mean, if you guys want to work on that, I will definitely review it. I will help you guys out. I will do as much as I can in my free time. But unfortunately, a lot of these big projects, it's difficult for me to kind of get myself the free time to do them, especially now as I'm getting older. My health is actually not that good right now. So health issues, working, stress from family issues back home in my home country, things like that. So any help is greatly appreciated. I feel extremely sorry that you guys have to deal with me because I don't like dealing with me, So so yeah, if you have anything that you guys want to talk about or that you guys want to learn about, you can always ask in the Matrix room. You can ping me whenever you want, as long as you're not pinging me every 5 seconds. That's fine. Just ask me questions. I'll get around to them whenever I can. But yeah, got a couple of questions. So are you planning to visit any confs anytime soon? I was invited to speak at the South Korean Bitcoin conference. However, there was a scheduling conflict, which was very unfortunate. There have been other conferences where I was looking to go to some of them, but then family issues came up. Last year, I had some family issues back in my home country, which caused me to spend a lot of money kind of going back and forth. I lost a lot of money on plane tickets. Just let me tell you, oh boy, if you think plane tickets are expensive, imagine doing that, like going back and forth like 5 times in a year. It's crazy. But anywho, so yeah, there's that. So I had a lot of scheduling conflicts last year, especially, but hopefully sometime this year I can get out to a conference and see you guys, have fun. I really want to get to see all you guys. I really enjoy. Lately I've been working on the mempool project with the mempool team, and they've been coming to Japan a lot, and so I just recently we did a flower viewing party, which was very nice. I enjoyed it a lot, but unfortunately, it's like scheduling conflicts and just growing older and all that fun stuff. So, but I definitely want to go to a conf sometime soon. It'll definitely be fun. All right, Andrew Toth. Any thoughts on having descriptor support? Oh, that was what I was just talking about. Is there any way we can verify that the current BIP 174 is properly implemented in the repository, or do we have to manually verify it by reading through the BIP? So the BIP, actually, a lot of BIPs have test cases at the end. So I think most of the test cases we already have in the repo, but there actually might be test cases for some of the newer features that that we don't have. So a good first hint might be to look at the test cases in the BIP. They're usually at the end. And then look at the test cases in our test folder and see if there's anything missing. And then if you see anything missing, put it in, check that it breaks, and then be like, well, why is it breaking? What is this testing? Usually they'll say next to the test, this is why it breaks, or this is what we're testing. Sometimes they don't, which is really annoying. But you can use the error message to kind of give you a hint as to where the error occurred, and then you can look at it and then say, well, this area has to do with this, so I wonder, let's look at the BIP and see if I can find like output BIP32 or something like that. Just search some terms in the web page and see if you can figure it out. Yeah, I mean, if you can't figure out like what things are missing, you could definitely just go ahead and go to BIP 370 and just start adding new features from BIP 370 and stuff like that. If you would like, that's one thing you can do. But like I said before, definitely, talk to the other people on Matrix and double check to make sure that no one's doubling their work. Okay. Interesting. Thanks. Would it be a big? Yep. If you're doing Taproot and having script path spends, it makes organizing the wallet a lot easier. Yeah, I could imagine. For Taproot, definitely descriptors are a big help. All right. It's been over an hour. It's almost midnight for me. So I'm getting tired. I'm old. I'm almost 40. Anywho, so I will go ahead and stop this here. This will be on my YouTube channel. I have other videos that are mostly in Japanese. So if you want to watch me speak Japanese about Bitcoin and Rust, definitely you can watch those other videos if you would like. But unfortunately, there's no subtitles. But I think the auto subtitles do kind of an okay job. But yeah. Anywho, yeah, it was great talking to you guys. If you have any other questions, feel free to ask them on Matrix, and I will try to get to them as fast as I can. And of course, if you have any questions about specific repositories, in the context of trying to create a PR for something, you can always just create a draft PR, and then we can discuss it there. Okay. All right, so this stream is going to be over. If you guys feel like there needs to be another stream to talk about some specific issue, definitely tell me in the chat, in Matrix chat, and we'll go ahead and stop this one here, and I will talk to you guys later. And good luck with all the stuff you guys are going to do on Summer Bitcoin, and I hope you guys have a wonderful, wonderful time. And it sounds like a lot of you guys are from India. If you want to teach me some Hindi, I love learning languages and learning about different cultures. I like Indian food a lot. If any of you have never been to Japan, Japanese Indian food is really good. Like, I've never been to India, so I'm sure it's probably a lot better where you guys are from. But I can tell you, if your food is better than Japanese Indian food, like Indian people came to Japan and started Indian restaurants, the food is so good. I really want to go to India someday. You guys should have a conference so that I can go. All right. So have a wonderful night, and yeah, let me know when you guys need any questions or want to talk about anything, or if you have any Indian food recommendations. All right. Thanks. Have a wonderful day. Bye bye. Or night, whatever. See ya. Bye.